trying to do it right. I've been living a lonely life. I've been sleeping.
Hey guys, welcome back to the third week of Sex Ed. The past few weeks we've been learning what it means to live out our sexuality according to God's plan for our lives. We've talked about how when sex is handled correctly in the confines of marriage, then it can be good for us, like fire in a fire pit. But if we take sex outside of the marriage, if we take fire out of the fire pit, then it can be dangerous and deadly for us. Last week we talked about how when the Bible talks about sexual immorality, it means more than just premarital sex. Sexual immorality is more than just what we do with our bodies. It also has to do with what happens in our minds and in our hearts. In order to really be sexually pure, we have to guard against not only what we do with our bodies, but also what happens in our minds. So this week, I want to talk about how we can actually guard our hearts and our minds so that we can stay sexually pure. You see, everything we do flows out of a belief. The reason I don't drink and drive is because I believe that if I drink and drive, my ability to drive will be hindered. And I am putting my life and someone else's life at risk. But the reason that I don't exercise is because I don't really believe that it will make me live any longer, or I believe I have plenty of time to start exercising. I may know the studies say that exercise will increase your lifespan, but if I don't do it, do I really believe that's true? Because I don't want to die young, I want to live longer, but if I don't do the things that will help me get there, do I really believe they're true? We all live out of what we believe. It's why Jesus put such a huge emphasis on faith. And faith is just having a confident belief that God is who he says he is and that he'll do what he says he'll do. If I know that God says that within marriage, sex can be good and fulfilling, and outside of marriage, it can be dangerous and deadly, why wouldn't I wait? Well, because I don't really believe it, or you could say, I don't really believe him. I believe what the culture tells me or what my body and my hormones are telling me more than I believe what the creator of my body is telling me. So I live out what I believe. If I really believe God's promises, then I'll wait on those promises. If I don't, then I won't. This is why it's important for us to control what goes into our minds. It's important for us to be aware of the messages that we're receiving from others and from the culture about sex. And we need to find out, are these coming from God? Because if they're not, we just need to get rid of them. It's like this friend of mine who loved Chinese food. So he went to this restaurant and ordered like a huge amount of food. He ate the whole thing and loved every bite, but then when he got home, he ended up puking his guts out. And then he had a distaste for Chinese food. Well, about 3 or 4 days later, he heard that the restaurant he went to had gotten in trouble with the health department because they found a dead rat in one of the bags of rice. The dead rat had contaminated the rice that my friend and many others had eaten, and that's why they got sick. You can't have healthy rice if there's a dead rat living in it, and you can't have a healthy life if there's sinful thoughts living in your heart and your mind. You see, when your source gets contaminated, you get sick. When your heart and your mind get corrupted by messages about sex that don't come from God, you start to believe something that's not true. You start to believe that sex is just for anyone who's ready or anyone who's old enough. You don't see it anymore as just something that belongs to a man and a woman who are married. You go, well, maybe it's not such a big deal. Everyone who's sleeping around a lot have a lot of fun and seem to be happy, so maybe God's idea is just outdated. Or you think, well, as long as I'm safe, that's all that matters. That's all that God cares about. It doesn't matter who I have sex with as long as I don't get pregnant or get a disease. And those are messages that are coming from our culture, not from God. You have to protect your source. It's like this verse in Proverbs 4 tells us. Above all else, guard your heart, for it is the wellspring of life. Guard your heart because your life flows from it. If you start to believe the wrong things about sex, then you'll start to live out of those beliefs. And the way you get incorrect messages about sex is by not guarding what you see, hear, and experience. So in your groups, talk about what messages we receive about sex from our culture and what we can do to guard against them. When the questions come up on screen, pause the video, discuss them, and press play when you're ready to move on. This quote comes from a man named Joseph Goebbels, who was the minister of propaganda for Adolf Hitler's regime that controlled Germany during the Second World War. For 12 years, Goebbels served as the minister of public enlightenment and propaganda, where he, through advertisements, pamphlets, and films, persuaded people to be a part or allow horrible things to take place. The idea that if you tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it, that people will eventually believe it, became true as Goebbels and Hitler convinced others to commit acts of murder and genocide against an entire group of people that they had blamed for all their problems. They told a big lie, repeated it often, and people came to believe it. But you want to know what the truth is? You and I are in the same boat as the German people. We've been sold a bag of lies, and we've believed them as if they were true. Every day we receive messages from our world about how to handle our sexuality and our bodies, and what all of those things say about us as a person. Most of these messages contradict what the Bible teaches, what God intended, but many of us choose to believe these messages instead of the Word of God. We are told that a fulfilling sex life comes from having a lot of different sex with a lot of different people, and that you really shouldn't even think about getting married until you find a person who you're sexually compatible with. You've probably heard someone say, you wouldn't buy a car without taking it out for a test drive, right? But think about how that works for you. I mean, do you really want to buy a car that has a lot of miles on it? No. We know that already. Yet we all want to get some experience in. We've chosen to believe the lie as if it were true. I mean, guys are told constantly that our sexual urges are the things that we can't control, and that it's healthy and natural for us to have multiple sexual partners. We're also told it's normal to experiment with our sexuality. It's healthy to masturbate and to look at pornography because everyone's curious. We're told that you're not really cool. I mean, you're not even normal. You're not even happy if you get through the first 18 years of your life and you've never had sex. Once again, they're ignoring the fact that Jesus lived at least 30 years and never had sex, and he was the happiest, most fulfilled person who ever lived. But most of us have bought this lie. Girls are told that they're only worth as much as they are beautiful and sexual. Girls are told that their sexuality is their power, that they can get whatever they want if they use sex as a weapon. But here's the deal. This isn't new. Women since the beginning of time have been told that they're only as good as they are sexual. In Jesus' time, it was that women were only as good as long as they were mothers. Once again, their bodies were defining their identity. One time Jesus was speaking and a woman from the crowd yelled, "Blessed is the woman who gave you birth and who nursed you." Now the person meant this as a compliment to Jesus and his mother. But Jesus took this as a chance to teach a lesson, as he always did. He replied, "Blessed rather are those who hear the word of God and obey it." According to Jesus, the highest honor a woman could receive was not that she was a good wife or mother. It was that she was fully devoted to God. And I think Jesus would say the same thing to everyone here today. Unlike what society tells you, the best thing that can happen to you is not that you become the most sexually desirable person on the planet, but that you come into a living, breathing, personal relationship with the God of the universe, and you give your life to him. You see, this is where most of our issues with our bodies and our self-esteem come from. And guys deal with this too. I mean, this isn't just a girl thing. I mean, we feel like we need to look a certain way or act a certain way or dress a certain way to be loved or to matter to anyone. Everyone wants to be desirable to another person. And so when our bodies don't match up to the picture we see in the magazine or the commercial or the movie or the music video, we start to freak out. We obsess and we decide, hey, I need to look like that. But even in our culture, we are starting to realize these messages are damaging and they're a lie, that no one really looks like that. This is why Dove, the cosmetic company, they came out with an advertising campaign questioning what real beauty means. Look at this clip. We've bought into the idea that real beauty is this photoshopped, Hollywood, artificial picture of beauty that no one can attain in real life. And we've bought into the idea that in order to have value as a person, that we have to be beautiful and desirable. Our idea is that if we look a certain way, someone will desire us more. And if we're desired, well, then I'm finally worth something. And I'm not trying to say that there's anything wrong with working out or putting on makeup or buying nice clothes. What I'm trying to say is that we need to be aware of what our motives are. Are we trying to look a certain way or act a certain way because we've bought into the idea that this is where our worth comes from? If so, that's dangerous. Because we're choosing to believe that who we are and how we act sexually is what determines whether we can be loved or not. And God is trying to say that you have value as a person because you were created in the image of God. You don't have to earn God's love by acting or looking a certain way. He loves you as you are. We all have bought into a lie of some kind, whether it's that we have to have sex to fit in, or that the only way to really live a happy life is to have sex, or that the way we look or dress determines whether we're lovable, or even that God's idea of sex is old-fashioned. In order to live the healthy sexual lives that God has for us, we have to be open about the lies that we've accepted as truth. So in your groups, I want you to look at a verse where people chose to accept lies as truth and see how we can turn back to God in this area. Some of the messages we receive about sex are more dangerous and hurtful than others. And before we leave, I want to talk about one way we receive messages that is incredibly dangerous for our lives, not only in our relationship with God, but also our relationship with others. I'm talking about porn. And just in case you don't know what I'm talking about or are pretending not to know what I'm talking about, let me make it clear. Pornography is anything that we watch or take part in outside the confines of marriage that's purpose is to stimulate us sexually. This can be nude photos or videos of sex or even stories that graphically talk about sex. And it can be things that we wouldn't even consider hardcore porn. But the truth is that many of us have at one point or regularly have viewed porn. And porn is incredibly dangerous, not only because it's sinful due to the fact that it's all about lust, or because it sends us dangerous messages about sex, but because it's addicting. And before you start to think that I'm talking down to you or condemning you, this was something that I struggled with heavily in middle and high school. It wasn't really until I was starting to get healing for all this that I realized it was an addiction. Pornography is dangerous, and there are still things that trip me up in my relationship with my wife and our sex life that came from things that I did when I was in high school. And this is why I care so much about this with you guys. Recent studies have told us that when you view pornography, the chemicals released in your brain are the same and at the same level as when you take cocaine. Porn is a drug, and it's more dangerous than cocaine for you because it's acceptable in our society. Most people will tell you that it's normal, healthy, and natural for you to view porn. And you should do it because it teaches you about sex. First of all, it doesn't teach you anything about sex. Real sex does not look like sex does in porn. No one talks like they do in porn. No one's interested in doing the things they do in porn. And since everyone is photoshopped, no one looks like they do in porn. Situations in life don't turn out like they do in porn. And what happens is you get tricked into thinking that's normal. Porn doesn't teach you anything about sex and usually fills your head with lies. Second, it's never healthy or normal for you to be addicted to something that you don't need. Those chemicals that are released in your brain also create a chemical dependence on themselves, just like they do in street drugs. And like I said earlier, this is more dangerous because it's cheaper, it's more available, and people don't even have to know you do it. But here's the problem. It tears you apart. I mean, no one wants to be the person that has to look at porn. Everyone wants to get to a place where they replace their fantasies with things that actually happen in real life. But it's not that easy. You don't just get married and those images and the fantasies just go away. If you choose to continue looking at porn, you will experience disappointment, dissatisfaction, and heartbreak as you hurt those around you. Once again, I'm not trying to make you feel guilty. I'm trying to get you to realize that this really does matter. It's not harmless. It will eventually affect the rest of your life. You think you can control it and that no one will ever know, but it will change you. You need to cut this out of your life. And before you once again start thinking this only applies to the guys, 1 in 3 viewers of porn are women. This affects us all. And in order to live the healthy life God has for us, we have to cut it out. But I also don't want you to end feeling terrible. I want you to know there's hope. As I said, for a long period of my life, I was addicted to porn, but I can tell you that now that I'm on the other side of this thing, there is hope. I'm not saying that everything changes overnight or that everything gets erased from your memory, but as you cut it out of your life, you start to heal. You become the person you want to be, and it becomes easier to fight those temptations. See, I now get to love and enjoy my wife and our life together the way I always wanted to. There is hope, but it starts with you being willing to be open about your struggle. I'm not saying you need to tell a lot of people. In fact, it's probably best if you just start with someone that you trust, someone that you know won't judge you, and someone who can hold you accountable for cutting this out of your life. There are services that can hold you accountable for what you look at online. The one that I use is called X3 Watch. It's from a place called xxchurch.com. They also have articles that can help you with your struggle. In order to be healed, you have to start by exposing your sin. Be open about whatever it is you struggle with, whether it be porn or lust or some other behavior. Talk to someone you trust. Let me suggest your group leader who loves and cares about you. They won't judge you or condemn you, but they want to help you. I hope we can all experience healing as we bring our secrets to light.